Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rock is George podcast. This is episode 9. I hope you've been enjoying the Rock is George podcast. Episodes 1 through 8 are available now at anchor.fm/rockisgeorge. With the debut of episode 8, I was able to branch out to more podcasting platforms, mostly because there was no music in episode 8. So I think going on, we're not going to have music so we can reach a bigger audience. So you can check out the Rock is George podcast starting with episode 8 on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Casts, and others. I can't imagine you're listening on some other casting platform besides those, but new ones keep coming up all the time. So for episode 9, I have another great interview with a musician. It's not a heavy metal one, so you won't see it at Metal Express Radio, the website that I contribute to. This is with the band Save the World. The mastermind behind Save the World, Dan Tracey, plays multiple instruments, writes songs, you name it, he does it for this band. Dan, together with his songwriting and song-playing partner, Robert Wright, make up Save the World. I came across the band when a promo came my way from their record label, Frontiers Music. I had never heard of the band before, which seems to be common these days. I seem to be a little out of the loop, having taken a break from music coverage for 10 years or so. But anyway, I had never heard of Save the World, and I listened to their latest album, entitled 2. It's a fantastic album from beginning to end. It's very bright. It's full of lush melodies, catchy songs. They get stuck in your head. You want to tap your feet. You want to bounce your head. Great songs. 80s style productions, which is right up there for me. I love the high production values. Everything seems to be layered, and I could go on and on. Save the World was releasing 2 albums at the same time through their new label, Frontiers Music. They were releasing 2, which is the new album for 2021, and they were releasing their 2016 independent release, 1, also on Frontiers. It's a great album as well. I really love 2. That doesn't mean I don't like 1, but I really love 2. I wanted to find out more about this band I hadn't heard of and such great songs, and I went on the internet, and there's not a lot of information. There's information out there, there's just not the information I wanted to know. So, I did find out that Dan Tracey plays in the live band for Alan Parsons. He also appeared on the last Alan Parsons release through Frontiers Music. I don't want to get too deep into Dan's history and Save the World, because everything I needed to find out I got from Dan direct. It was a great interview. I had a great time talking to him. Here is Dan Tracey from Save the World. So we'll get started. I ask everybody the same question right out the gate. If I knew absolutely nothing about Save the World, how would you describe the band's music to me?
Save the World is a genre-less band, really composed of 2 guys, and we write emotionally penned songs that make you feel good and make you think.
Absolutely. And on May 7th, you didn't just release 1 album, you released 2 albums. You released your newest album, entitled 2, on Frontiers Music, and at the same time you released your previous album, 1. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about 2. It seems a little brighter, a little more hopeful, a little glossier than 1. Was that done on purpose or organically, you think?
No, I think it was pretty much organically. We were, 3, we had the luxury of, 1, I'm getting way out of myself here. 1, we had the luxury of having 3 years to record that record. And it was a compilation of songs I had written over, a lifetime that I tucked away. Some songs that were going to be on Alan Parsons records and never made it to that. And then others that I had kind of tucked away and saved for myself instead of different artists. And then, the pandemic hit, and I was just really writing songs. I had a lot of time on my own, and I'd go out to my writing cabin or take long rides, and I was able to write about different subjects and different things. But I think it was hopeful because we were all trying to be hopeful and rise out of this thing.
Now, I'm not really a guy that interprets music very well or the meaning behind songs. Are you a guy that likes to discuss the meanings behind your songs?
Absolutely, yeah, because there's a lot of thought that went into the subjects and the lyrics. Sure.
So let's talk about one of the singles that you released, Camera Obscura, if you want to talk about what inspired that.
Yeah, so this is kind of a pretty cool story. I was on a flight going to Europe, and typically you pick out 3 movies to watch to kind of suck up some of the time. And I kept seeing this documentary go by called Tim's Vermeer. And the name Vermeer stuck out to me because I like Impressionist art. And he was a 1600s Dutch painter known as the Painter of Light. And the reason being is you would look at his paintings and it really looked like you were looking through a window. It was just, it was amazing to people at the time. And, they all thought this guy was a genius. He was a recluse. He would go into his studio and not come out until the works of art would appear, and they would just be, stunning. And so fast forward to now in 2009, I believe, and this self-made millionaire, Tim Janison, who is the father of television technology and movie technology. It's how we see it. He even helped develop lenses that the camera uses, and also the technology to process it with computers. He is also a lover of fine art, goes to see this thing, and as he's looking at his most famous painting, he sees on the shelf, the fireplace shelf, the mantle, that the light is falling off in a way that only is produced by a lens. It's curved. So he says, well, wait a minute. This is, a human eye wouldn't perceive this. Only a lens would. So he then figures out that this painter was a fraud, and he was basically painting by numbers using something called the camera obscura, which is a small mirror and a device set up where it can actually get the perfect color of what you're looking at. Once the colors match, the image actually disappears below you in the mirror. But there's a documentary out, and it's called Tim's Vermeer, and it's everybody I turn it on to, they call me back, and they're it's a jaw drop. I mean, it's amazing what this guy did to recreate it.
I'm absolutely going to check that out. That is definitely a lot of thought put into that song. I can really appreciate that. Another single that you have out is Miss Muse. I'm kind of thinking this is either the partner in your life or somebody close in your life, or you're kind of seeing it through someone else's lens.
Well, yeah, I try to, with all my songs, I try to make sure that the listener can put themselves in it and somebody that inspires them. And yes, it was absolutely inspired by my wife, who really keeps me on track and keeps me grounded. And this is a crazy, tough business, but she also lets me know that I have a purpose here, and part of that purpose is to create music that makes people feel good. So she's constantly pushing me to get better and reach higher and not settle on my goals, to always, do better. And I think most people that are successful have somebody like that, whether it be, a parent, a girlfriend, a wife, a spouse, anything like that. So that's pretty much what it's about. And I wanted it to have a kind of a throwback feel to it and a happy feel, uplifting.
Absolutely. I agree, and I shouldn't say kinda. I look at my wife the same way, with all the support and all the love. We've been married for a long time as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Good for you.
Defenders of the Faith is another one of your singles that you have out now, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so a classmate, I'm actually sitting with my best friend from childhood right here, all the way back to elementary school, so we're hanging out today. But a classmate of ours was killed in the early days of the Afghan war after 9/11, and he was in a secret group called the 2-4, which is basically the third branch of like the Navy SEALs, the Delta Force that we all know. The 2-4 was a branch that worked with both. And he was the last recipient of the Medal of Honor. And there's a book that's out called Alone at Dawn. And now there's a movie coming out probably in 2022 with Jake Gyllenhaal playing him. And we hope to have some music in that movie. But I was approached by this gentleman's sister. His name is John Chapman. And, I wanted to honor John. And she was able to give me some contacts with the 2-4 to get some footage of those guys. And they're now kind of coming out of, I don't want to say hiding, but they're letting people know what they do. I was able to get a lot of that footage, which you see in that film, and it took a lot to run up to Flagpole and get that stuff and get it cleared in order to use it. And I just think they're amazing guys. They're at the top of their, I hate to call it a game, but they're at the top of their profession. They're at the top of their profession at what they do. And, I always associate our brotherhood as a band, like even in the Alan Parsons project, with the same brotherhood they have with their team. Obviously, we're not saving lives, but it's that same feeling. So I could associate what I have with my band brothers with what they have and how special that is. So that's what I tried to write about in the song, and also they're on the front lines doing the dirty work, man.
Is this the second song you've written about John Chapman? Was Bleed from the album one about John Chapman as well?
I don't think it was specifically about John, but it was definitely, when he passed, it piqued my awareness. I mean, my dad was in the military. My wife's grandfather was a sharpshooter in the military. We've always had great love and respect and honor our military, but this brought it to the forefront for me, and it didn't go unnoticed that because of John's sacrifice, I'm able to live my dream and fulfill my dream to play music and share my music with people. So I just felt like I have a little platform and able, to speak to those people about the sacrifices made by not only the people that serve, but their families. I just made it a portion kind of that song, but yeah, that definitely inspired that whole tune. And that was the first song we ever did together for Save the World. It was an experiment. So let's try one song. I have a song I wrote, and we heard that sound, man. And I remember years earlier, I had walked away from a band because I was just busy. And I was busy now, frankly, when this started, but I didn't want to make that mistake again because that band also had a very special sound. And my connection with my partner, Robert, is undeniable. We have something. So we want to keep going with it. And Frontiers has given us that opportunity to do it.
How did you hook up with Robert?
Robert, I kept hearing about this other guy in town through other session players, and finally a mutual friend had heard some of my music, and he said, "You really got to get together with Robert Wright." And I said, "You're the third person who's told me about this guy." And he goes, "He's like you, he plays a bunch of instruments." And I thought, well, why would we need two of us doing that, But I met up with him for coffee one day, and he gave me a CD, and I thought, wow, he's a great guy. Maybe we should get together. But once again, we're both busy. He's producing records, and I was touring. About a month later, I came back from tour, and I looked down, and I saw the CD in my car. It said Robert Wright on it, and I popped it in. I heard Bohemian Rhapsody, top to bottom. It was absolutely stunning. Not only the performance, but the recording, the mix, everything. And I was like, I called him up. I go, "Dude, is this all you?" And he goes, "Yeah." And then I played like 3 or 4 other songs on it. And I said, we have to get together. We got to get together. And we just completely hit it off. It's very odd that you can be raised in Connecticut and Mississippi and still kind of come up with the same musical backdrop. I don't want to say all the bands, but we have a very, very wide breadth of musical influences that we love. Everything from old Motown to heavy metal to pop music. I mean, we like it all. We like something about all of it. And to find somebody else that I was able to weave this into our music with was a godsend for me. We just understand each other without having to say it. There's a song on the first record called Let Love Win, and I did not put an electric 12-string part in the bridge, and I was talking to Robert on the phone. I said, hey, there's an electric 12-string part I'd like to add to the bridge. And he goes, hang on a minute. And I hear ding on my phone, and I pushed play, and he had put the part in that I had heard in my head already. That kind of stuff is pretty scary and pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a close relationship to have there.
Yep.
You certainly want a guy that can read off of you.
Yeah, man. He understands the references that I'm going for in my music, you know.
I wanted to ask you about the song Man on an Island. It sounded very familiar to me. It sounded like a Boston song, so I wanted to ask if it was about Brad Delp.
It is. I think on the CD jacket, I had them put a tribute to Brad Delp. In 1992, I went to see Brad's side project with the other ex-Boston member, Barry Goudreau, at a club in Northampton, Mass. I think it was called Pearl Street. And it was absolutely a typhoon out that night, and 8 people showed up to see the band.
Jeez.
Now, most people would think that's horrendous. They came out and absolutely killed it. They were fantastic. And Brad sang better than ever. I think probably better than I'd seen in most of the live videos. He was at his, the top of his game. After the show, he kind of just walked out into the audience, and I stood up and we shook hands and we chatted a little, and before I knew it, it was 2 hours later, and we've been hanging out talking. When I got home that night, I was still on cloud nine meeting my hero. I mean, this guy, more so, not just the vocal stuff he did, but all the harmony arrangement. I'm a big harmony guy. And that stuff has always been just, mind-blowing to me, how he put that all together. And his range is phenomenal, too. I went home, and my wife said, well, how was it? And I said, he's such a kind guy. I said, but there's something off there. He's happy, but you could see that he's carrying around a lot of pain, a lot of sadness. And I just could never put my finger on it. And she said, what do you mean? I said, he's kind of like a man on an island. And I'd always kept that line in my head. Now, fast forward to, we're at the end of making this record. I'd sent Robert 11 songs that I wrote for this record, and I put, these are the songs. I said, you know what, I'd love to put one more on it. He's like what? And I said, well, I have this idea for a tribute to Brad Delp. And he was like all over it. And I wrote the song literally that day, afternoon, in about 20 minutes, and I pulled that title out. And I had my assistant push play and record over and over in my studio, and by the end of it, I had the full song. A lot of it just came out. The little breakdown bridge in there, I did on the spot and did the harmonies to it and wrote the guitar parts to it on the spot. So it was very, it was channeled. To me, it came from the essence of what I felt listening to them the first time I heard that music. The big challenge on that song was I did not want to write a sad song about depression and suicide. I wanted to tell Brad's story in an authentic way, but I also wanted to relate that feeling that I had, and what everybody had. I mean, it made you want to roll your windows down in the summer and crank up that music. It was just, it made you feel something immediately, and it was so new and fresh. And so that's what I wanted to bring across in that song, which is kind of odd to have a happy, upbeat song, but with lyrical content of a guy who was struggling with who he was inside and battling depression, and having to be very public with carrying around that kind of private pain and still smile through it.
Exactly. And I mean, I recognized it right off the bat. I'm like, this is Boston. This is, I think the project with Barry Goudreau that you were talking about was Return to Zero.
RTZ, yeah. Great songs on that.
Great albums. Great albums.
Record, man.
Yeah.
And, this is the first time I'll tell anybody this. I invited Barry to appear on the record. I think for some legal reasons, he had to say no, thank you. And he likes the song. He's heard the song. But it would have been great to get Barry on that song. But it's all good. I completely understand where he's coming from. And, I know a lot of people are digging it and making him feel good.
The song Denslow Park is kind of special to you. It's kind of a place that you hung out growing up.
Yeah, so it was just like it says, the lyric says, it was a block to the north, and not really a dead end street. It hooked around, but it was chain link fence, nothing special, and but they had a little blue warming shed, they called it, that had a heater in it. A guy was in there, a DJ, and he would literally put LPs on them, play them through these giant 70-volt, car lot speakers. And we had these ugly but beautiful blue tungsten lights, which put this hue over everything and made it like, dreamlike at night. That's where we grew up, and that's where, a lot of people got their first kiss or met their first girlfriend or, had to deal with the tragedy of losing a sibling. Everything was going on in that park, in town. Is where we all gravitated towards. And it's one of those things where you don't realize how special that was until, much older, when you look back and you go, gosh, people don't have that today. We were so lucky. And I know that other people have that kind of special place growing up. We all do. So I tried to write it as a place that everybody could relate to, and growing up and coming of age, everybody can relate to that. And that started as a ballad, and I was like, this ain't gonna work. And I called Robert and I said, give me some input. Come on, give me some inspiration here. And all he said was, he goes, Bryan Adams, and he hung the phone up. And then I called him back and I go, how about this? The gentleman who was, I can't recall his name right now, and I should know that. I want to say Schwartzman, but it's something like that. The gentleman with the Fountains of Wayne band, such a talent, and passed away of COVID right at that time. And I said, you know what? Let's pay a little homage to him and do a Fountains of Wayne kind of Stacy's Mom vibe to it. And Robert was like, I love that. He goes, I'll put a little Cars kind of influence in it. I think people, if they heard us talk like that in discussions, they would call it a ripoff or something, but that's not it. I mean, to us anyway, to me, it's like paying homage to these guys that created such great music. I mean, you could say the same thing about ELO, because every single ELO song is Beatles influenced.
Right.
And then there's the band Blue that's ELO influenced, and it goes on and on. So to carry the flag forward for a lot of this music is something that I don't shy away from.
We're also in a time of music, I think, where it's not gonna be there 50 years from now. You have these acts that you can look to for inspiration 50, 40 years ago now, but I don't think you're going to be able to 50 years in the future. You're going to have to go back 100 years.
Yep, maybe so.
Let's talk about the album 1, released simultaneously with 2. It was originally released in 2016. Was it something you think didn't get a good enough look that it was worth releasing with 2 when you went to Frontiers?
Well, this is a really an odd story. So we actually sent 1 to Frontiers, I think a day after we finished it and mastered it. And we thought, well, this would be a good home for us. We had friends on that label, and within 2 minutes, we got a no thank you. I also could tell with a 2-minute reply that nobody listened to it. But, it is what it is. So we put it away, and we sold it ourselves. Well, lo and behold, we started getting these weird emails from fans in Europe, all over the place. Netherlands, Spain, Germany. Finally, one guy in Spain who was really loved the band sent me an email, and he said, why aren't you on these sites? Why aren't you talking to these people? And I said, well, I'm busy touring, and Robert's producing records, and I explained the whole thing to him. And he's like, well, you're perfect for Frontiers. And he said, well, have you seen this? And he sent me a link, and I got on, and there was like an 800-person thread of people talking about the 1 album and just raving over it. And we thought, holy cow. So we had no idea. We knew we were selling a bunch of records through our thing, but, we thought, well, it must be a lot of Alan Parsons fans or a lot of our personal friends or Robert's fans from his records. And turns out they were all going overseas, and we were just too busy to pay attention. So Frontiers had called us, and we signed a 5-record deal with them, but they wanted to reissue 1 and we put it in a simple jacket. They wanted to put it in a real jewel case with a fold out, and because they understand their audience in Europe, and that's required over there. So yeah, that's how that all came into fruition.
Hey guys, Rock is George here, and it's time for the Rock is George podcast whiskey break. Once again, I don't get any endorsements of any kind. I'm just a whiskey lover. I like it all. Whiskey, Scotch, bourbon, rye, it's all good. It's all in the same family. For today's whiskey break, we're going to go to the bottom shelf. A lot of people think that there's bad stuff on the bottom shelf, but I'm here to tell you that's where you're going to find your surprise whiskeys. Especially something that's been on the bottom shelf for a very long time. Today we're going to be tasting Ballantines' Finest Blended Scotch Whiskey. I had never tried this. I've been drinking whiskey probably religiously and as a fan for the last 5 years or so. Ballantines never came up on my radar. It was voted the world's best blended Scotch in 2020. I can't remember the publication, but that's what kind of piqued my interest in it. Most people will tell you, and I've said this before in previous podcasts, most people will tell you single malt is where it's at, and I'm here to tell you that's bullshit. There's plenty of great blended Scotches, and blended Scotches are just single malts blended together. And Ballantines has been using the same recipe since 1910, so that's got to say something about them. You can get a 2-liter bottle of Ballantines for about $20. So in the terms of bottom shelf, you're not going to get any lower on the shelf. Actually, I wanted to find a small bottle to try it, but I couldn't. So I have almost a 2-liter bottle of Ballantines. So hopefully it's good, right? Right. So first thing you should know, it's a screw cap. So you know what you're getting there. You're getting long old wives' tales about how it must be junk because it's a screw cap. That's what you're getting. It's kind of a light brown in color. It smells oaky. Not too strong on the nose. Not a lot of alcohol to it. 40% alcohol by volume. So let's give it a try. So the first thing that comes out in Ballantines is very smooth. Not a huge alcohol bite. I mean, you could sip on this, no problem. A lot of oak, a lot of sweetness. Not much spice to it. No peat at all that I can taste. There may be peat in it. I didn't really look that up. But none that I can taste. Definitely a beginner whiskey, I would say. It's even enjoyable for people that would consider themselves whiskey snobs. I don't think I'm a whiskey snob. I just say aficionado. Ballantines really surprises me for a bottom shelfer, which I like. I mean, I've certainly had bottom shelfers that live up to the name, or dusties. Sometimes they call them dusties. That depends how old they are, too. But anyway, Ballantines' Finest. Great blended Scotch whiskey, I think, whether you're a beginner, you've been drinking for a while, or, you don't want to share your good stuff with family and friends. So you slip them some of this and tell them they're drinking the same thing as you. So, it's time to get back to the interview with Dan Tracey of Save the World. I like that story. That's a good one. A couple differences from 1 and 2. One, like I said, one seems a little darker. You had an additional band member in John Wysocki, formerly of Stained. Did you try to keep John on for 2, or was it just like we did this together and we're cool?
Organically, Robert and I were obviously coming up with the bulk of the material, and we've said this before in interviews. It's not a surprise. Robert played on the drums on the majority of one. I played on a song on the Cecilia Weiss Houdini song on that. John was coming to the studio here and there, and we had him play on, I think it ended up 2 or 3 tracks. Of course, we featured him as the drummer for the band. I think we just kind of grew in different directions. He wanted a harder sound, and I mean, it wasn't really an argument. Me and Robert were already putting the bulk of the things together, and he'd gone on to do some other things, and we just parted ways. It wasn't really anything even official. Me and Robert had already created the next record by the time we'd even started discussing it. Yeah, so we wish him well. He's on to do other projects, and it was great having it start. You could tell, again, I know you're mentioning, some of it was darker. We wanted to kind of surf around a little and find our audience. Obviously, John's from a band that had a pretty dark sound. So Bleed maybe leans on that, and maybe Black Pearl, that kind of stuff. Listen, at its core, Robert and I are just melody junkies and hook junkies. That stuff, whether it's heavy or whether it's dark or light or smiley, that's going to be influenced. You're going to hear everything from the Carpenters to Metallica in our music, and everything in between. And then again, we had some songs, like I say, there were some cast-off songs. I had written Princes and Thieves for an Alan Parsons record, thinking this is going to be perfect for that. But it was too much of an opus for Alan to wrap his head around when we were doing The Secret. It was way too much. I ended up leaving that pitch session and going home and writing the song As Lights Fall for that record instead, which was a much better fit for the album. And Alan, rightly so, was right to say, hey, this is too much for that, and pick a song that fit in much better with his lineup of material. Also, the song The Light was also written for an Alan Parsons record. Cecilia Weiss was also going to be part of the Secret record. Obviously, it was Magic. And, sometimes those songs don't land where there are, but luckily for us, there's always a space. Robert was thrilled when Alan didn't care for Cecilia Weiss, because he's like, well, we're putting that on our record for hell yeah, I have songs right now that I've written for a very famous horn band, is about all I should say about that.
No, I know who that, come on.
And another very popular 80s band as well. Now, both of those bands really like these songs, and hopefully they'll get placed on the record. If they don't, guess where they're going to land?
The next Save the World album.
Well, there you go. So this has been a very good outlet for Robert and I.
Are you working on new music for Save the World already? Because,
yes.
With lockdowns and stuff like that, everybody is writing.
Listen, I'm always writing. I moved to Nashville to really, I know some people move into music hubs to get famous and push their career forward. I moved to Nashville to get better at my craft. This is where all the best storytellers are, in my opinion, and that's what I wanted to do. So that was immensely helpful. But I have a deep catalog of songs that I'm always working on. Some of them are 3 years old, and I'll hear something and go, oh, this is the part that I needed for that. And I'll pull it back out, finish it, and that'll appear on a record. Sometimes it's just out of the blue. I'll see something and go, that basically was Defenders of the Faith. I saw a little blip of John's team working, and I said, man, these guys are keeping the faith and and came up with the line, and then the whole song shot out in a half hour from that. But I think we have plenty of material. I've got about 4 songs already for the next record. Can you guess what the name of the next record is?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be 3.
No.
Or are you going to pull a chicken foot and call it 4?
Nope. It's called Buckle My Shoe.
Nice.
I'm teasing. I have no idea what the next one is. But yeah, there's... and I know Robert has a few songs that he sent me that I think are great. And he's always got a deep pocket full of material. For our thing, it's always we go through it and say, all right, how do we make it save the world now? How do we fit it into our thing? And that usually comes with Robert's production expertise and reimagining certain parts.
Are you still writing music and submitting it for television and movies and commercials? I know you've done that in the past.
Yeah, I have a lot of songs, so sometimes I just go through and I go, oh, I haven't sent that to anybody. Or I'll get an email from somebody and they say, I'm looking for a song like, for instance, I think about 3 weeks ago I had a music supervisor call me and say, listen, I need an intro for this, what's the show all the women watch? The Heart channel, what is it? What do you call it?
Lifetime?
Lifetime, thank you. And, she basically, I said, what's it about? She said, oh, this girl, she leaves her husband and she's starting over in a small town and she's opening a store and, she tells me the whole thing. And then I sat down and I wrote a song in an hour and put it together. And what do you want it to sound like? I want it to sound like old Motown, but happy. Okay. And then I give it that influence. And that's pretty much, how I do it, and then send it in. And sometimes it's something I've already had for many years that I'll send in, and it's a match. Sometimes it's a piece that I've had in other films and movies, and I can use it again because the licensing is only for one use. There's a lot of opportunity. I do it. I don't think it's the main crux of what I do. Really right now, touring. Now that we're back, touring, songwriting, session work is kind of my day-to-day music life.
Right. The plot you described of the Lifetime movie is the plot of every single Lifetime movie, by the way.
Exactly. You're exactly right. But I got to still listen to them explain it to me so I can sound like I care. No.
Have you thought about a live show or maybe an off live show for Save the World, or is your time kind of really tied up with Alan Parsons as far as live performances are concerned?
Well, Alan has been so great to me that my allegiance lies with him in making sure that we serve his music. And quite honestly, I don't know he's going to retire in the next year, 2, 5, but it's kind of our collective dream, I think, as his band and Alan. I hope Alan as well, that we're going to sail off into the sunset together and call it a day with that lineup. And so we're protective of that and the chemistry that we share. We're protective of that. So that's my first allegiance. But I put Save the World together as a studio band to see what it would sound like. And we get a lot of requests, including from Frontiers, to come out and play live. We have some pretty amazing players that I think would blow your mind that have already shown interest in being part of that. Name guys in big bands with songs about continents. That everybody knows. So we would definitely consider that if the timing was right. I don't want to say if the money was right. It's not all about money for us, but it's got to be financially feasible to move everything that we want to bring there. And if we do it, we want to do it epic. I feel like our music is epic as far as everything we put into it and how it feels. And I want to relay that with lighting and sound. Luckily, through my association with Alan, and obviously Robert is a very, very gifted audio engineer, we have amassed a really good selection of live audio guys and lighting guys. And I think it would be an absolutely killer visual and audio presentation. So when the time comes, we would certainly love to do it at the top level.
I wanted to ask you about the possibility of a vinyl release for either 1 or 2. I know Frontiers does them sometimes, but right. I don't know what the situation is here.
First of all, Robert is a lover of vinyl and collects turntables all the way from the early Victrola stuff up to new popular stuff. He hit me to some things that I was unaware of, that, the different types of needles for different types of vinyl and different weights of vinyl. And he's way into it. So he's excited to do something with a vinyl record. But, the audience has to be there. You can't just tell Frontiers we want to do a vinyl and then nobody buys it. So we've had a lot of fans express that they would like to see a vinyl record of 2 and 1. We relay that to Frontiers. They see it in the threads and in the comment sections on their pages. So they're aware. And when the time comes, they may step up and say, hey, we're going to do it.
Is it something that would be possible on your end as an artist? I had talked to Robert Berry of the band 3, and he had released the 3 project 3.2 through Frontiers, but he did vinyls on his own.
To be honest, I'd have to go back through our contract. I'm big on keeping my word, so I believe that they have the rights to do it.
Right.
And if obviously, if I spent the money and did it, it just wouldn't make sense. It's not that I wouldn't want to do that for fans, but it's just that I don't want to. I want to stay in my lane. I want to let them do what they do well, and they've allowed me 100% creative control over this, and that's really all I ask.
And that's awesome. And they're a great label, no matter whom I've talked to. So obviously, you keep that relationship going.
Yeah, they've been really good to us.
Are you working on anything with Alan Parsons that you can talk about?
There will be record coming. I don't know, subject matter, if it's going to be a themed record like The Secret was. Don't know anything about that. I know he's already got a couple songs that he likes that have been selected for the record. We're all putting stuff aside for him. Honestly, I haven't written anything yet. I like to kind of see the lay of the land, and then I can go home and work in my studio. I've just had better luck if I can kind of see what's needed on a record. You know what I mean? Like the Secret record, we had, I don't want to say too many, but we had enough ballads on that. And I presented As Lights Fall as a ballad. I could see that Alan really loved the song. He actually had a tear in his eye when I played it for him. But it was about his rise and where he wanted to go as an artist and how he wanted to exit, And it resonated with him. But we had too many ballads on the record. So he's like, man, we can't use this. And my wife is the one that suggested to, reimagine it as an up-tempo. And, I kept saying, nope, I was fighting it. And finally, on the plane ride home from Santa Barbara after that session, I started hearing it as up-tempo song, and I literally got off the plane and took an Uber to my studio downtown, and I played all the instruments on it. And when I came back 4 days later, I played Alan my demo of it with everything, and he turned to me and he said, call the boys and let's record it, and it literally happened that quickly. But yeah, we all have some stuff for the next record, and I'm excited there's going to be a next record. I know the fans want one.
Absolutely. How did you end up meeting Alan?
So I met him indirectly through a connection with Jonathan Kane.
Yep.
His tech, it was a buddy of mine, Brent Jeffers, and he called me and said, hey, I need some help with some gear that I knew pretty well that Alan was using, but I didn't know it was Alan at the time. And I said, I got a busy session schedule. I can't make this work. And they said, we'll fly you to Pennsylvania and we can hang out. And I said, man, I'm just swamped. And I go, who is this for? And he said, Alan Parsons. I said, well, let me clear my plate. So, yeah, I'd always, I remember being a boy, probably 12 years old, and my brother, who was way into Pink Floyd and stuff, played me some Alan Parsons stuff. And I remember hearing Time and just feeling like I was floating when that hook hit, that lift in the chorus. I was just like, wow, it was just amazing. So, I knew of his iconic records and some of the records that people really don't know that he did, like the Hollies and other stuff. I'd always followed his career, so I wanted to meet the man. And I went out and I met him, and I did some work for him, and then he asked me to stay on to help him with the technical side of things, and I said, I really don't do that. And then he made me a nice offer, and I said, well, you know what, let me do this for a while. And I never once at that meeting said, I think maybe initially I said, well, I'm a session guy in Nashville. But, he's not the kind of guy you're going to sit down and impress with words. I'm not that kind of person to start reading somebody a resume, and it just doesn't matter in Nashville. We all work together and we all do our thing. Eventually, he had heard me sing at a little nightclub after we did a wine tasting. And he leaned over to my wife and he said, why isn't he in my band? And my wife said, well, you haven't asked him yet. We had a conversation about it, and I think 3 days later he called me. I was at a wedding with my wife, and he invited me into the band, and then I said, let me think about it for one night. And my wife, of course, said, call him back right now. You're doing this, yeah, it worked out really good. It's been... more so than anything, like I say, the chemistry of that band is special, and that's I don't say that in a bragging way. It has nothing to do with chops. I think when I say that to people, they think it's like all these chop meisters in a band. It has nothing to do with that. Yes, guys can play in the band. It's how we listen to each other and how we protect Eric and Alan's legacy and that wonderful music. Those songs are special to us. I'm dead serious. When one of us starts coloring outside the lines a bit because we're bored, you'll get called out, and sometimes it's just a glance and a nod where we smile, and the other guy knows, okay, that was a little much. Let's tie it back down and make sure we're giving the audience the complete essence and experience of what they heard on these records when they heard them the first time. And we are probably more anal about that than Alan Parsons. And I think he sees that in us, and he sees how we protect and covet that material. And it's what's kept this thing going.
I loved all the stories that you told me today. I got a really good insight to what's going on with you, Dan. I loved the Save the World stuff. I especially loved 2. I liked 1 as well. I'm glad that you're killing it with Alan Parsons. I'm glad you're killing it with this new band and you're keeping busy with the sessions. And I wanted to thank you very much for coming on
man, you're very kind.
I wanted to thank you for coming on my podcast, because I see you don't do a lot of interviews.
A few here and there.
Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate you having me and letting me, speak directly to the fans and tell them what we do and what we're about. And Robert and I want to thank all the fans for all the support, and especially folks like you for caring enough to actually dig in and find out about the songs and a little deeper meanings. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that goes a long way with fans sometimes if they're not understanding a song, hearing it directly from the artist. Yeah,
that's fun. I mean, Robert and I are both, we call each other liner note reader nerds. And that was us when we were kids. We had the albums folded out, and, we didn't have internet back then, but we'd have to research and find out about these producers and the players that were on these records. And it was great fun for us. But I appreciate you having me today.
And like I said, I appreciate you. The new albums are out. 1, 2, Frontiers Music. They're streaming. You can get physical copies at Frontiers Music Store. And once again, thanks for coming on the Rock is George podcast.
All right, George. Cheers. Be good.
And that was Dan Tracey of Save the World. You can check him out at savetheworldband.com. He's also on Facebook, Save the World Band. And you can check out his work with Alan Parsons at alanparsons.com. I highly recommend checking out his 2 newly released albums, 1 and 2. You can stream them at Spotify. You can stream them at Apple Music. You can stream them at Amazon. You can stream them wherever you can stream music. You can also buy his new album on CD through the Frontiers Music Store, frontiers.it. There's store links there. I want to thank Dan Tracey once again for joining the Rock is George podcast, and I want to thank you for tuning in to episode 9. You've been great. I've been George Dion, and I'll see you again soon.